Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. India's economic recovery from the COVID pandemic is complete and the economy is expected to grow in the range of 6 to 6.8% in the coming financial year 2023-24. Despite the slowdown, India will remain the fastest growing major economy in the world as per the Economic Survey 2022-23 that was tabled in Parliament on Tuesday by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman just a day before she presents the Union Budget. Prepared by the Chief Economic Advisor V. Anantha Nageswaran, the Economic Survey details the state of the Indian economy, the challenges due to global uncertainties, and also the roadmap for India's growth in the remainder of this decade. So in Perspective today, we will analyze the key highlights of the annual report card of the economy. An illustrious panel of experts join us to discuss the key takeaways of the economic survey. So let me begin first by introducing them to you. With me in the studio is Dr. S.P. Sharma, Chief Economist and Director of Research, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Sharma, delighted to have you with us in the program. And joining us virtually are two distinguished panelists as well. Mr. Anand Singh Bhal, former Principal Economic Advisor, Government of India, and Mr. M.P. Besbarua, his Professor, Department of Economics, Guwahati University. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program as well. Mr. Bhal, let me begin the program today with you. So the survey, of course, provides a detailed, comprehensive analysis of the state of the Indian economy. But if I may begin by asking you, what for you are some of the biggest takeaways that the economic survey provides, which comes at a time when we are surrounded by global uncertainties, not to forget?
So as rightly said, the economic survey presents a report card of the government for the year 2022, 21-22, and what it will augur for the next year. So basically, it presents the chief economic advisor's perspective on how the year failed as far as economy went, and based on his analysis, based on his sort of perception, how he expects the next year to be. So one big takeaway from this survey is that this decade is now going to be much better. The recovery from COVID, he has very categorically said, is complete, and now the Indian economy will sort of traverse on a sort of higher growth path to a more sort of a vibrant and bigger economy. So that for me is the sort of biggest takeaway from this. Very categorically, the chief economic advisor has said the recovery from Corona is over, and
right.
Now thanks to the reforms over the last 10 years, which he has gone out to spell it in great detail, the digital platform, the capex, the capital expenditures, and the banking reforms, how all these, and the inclusive growth and improved governance, how all these reforms will nudge India, will push India towards a higher growth path, and India will go on to become a very strong nation among the committee of nations. Thank you.
That's right. Professor, that's one of the biggest factors of the economic survey, that we've not just sustained that growth momentum, but the good news is that we continue to remain the largest, fastest growing major economy, despite the slowdown, despite the global slowdown, and despite the global uncertainties. But what I would like you to elaborate for the benefit of us and our viewers is, what for you have been the three biggest reforms which have, held India's macroeconomic parameters in a way which has helped us position in a much, much better and comfortable position compared to the other economies?
Yes, it is extremely important that actually the expectations which were there a few months back, that was not so bright. So now things are from the facts that has been presented to us in the economic survey. The things look much better. So tomorrow, Madam Finance Minister is going to present her, budget with a much, sort of brighter kind of ambience, outlook rather. All right, and it has been mentioned that growth will be good next year also. But one has to remember that the last year also growth was not bad actually. It's around 7%, which is quite good coming out of the pandemic. So this is extremely important, and one has to look at this growth is also fairly robust and and spread out. Although industry sector has not been grow very fast, all the sectors have shown positive growth. And what is important is that India's strength has been in the service sector, and many of the services which were hit very badly in the COVID time, those have actually have recovered now. The service sector has led this particular growth from the supply side, and from the demand side also. Household consumption expenditure has actually been growing. So there has been growing demand in the economy, which is extremely, sort of encouraging. Because even before the COVID situation, you remember that Indian economy had started a slowdown, and most of the economists were saying that it was because of slackening of the demand there in the middle of 2018, we started actually slowing down. So now it seems the things are all actually sort of, revived. I'm not answering your question. I'll come to that shortly. But before that, I'd like to point out one very important aspect. That is, it is not only our government's economic survey which is saying that things are good. Actually, internationally also, earlier today, IMF have come up with it's a revised perspective on the global economy. And it says it's very positive, which is also a very good thing for India. It's saying that globally, the inflation has been peaked. So, the high inflation will be coming down now, and there will not be a recession. There was a fear of global recession going down, but then now the growth rate may be
Professor,
less, but
I'll come back to the inflation point in just a bit. Let me bring in Dr. Sharma also into the discussion, get his perspective on what he thinks about the economic survey. Dr. Sharma, we've spoken several times in the year gone by as well about what has actually helped India, turn up to be a resilient economy. There have been several factors that we have spoken about in greater detail. But now that the economic survey comes up with this detailed analysis of the several sectors that have been resilient and whose recovery has been much faster than anticipated, the question to you is it the kind of impetus that we would be expecting at a time when the global uncertainties remain at an all-time high, inflation continues to remain a worry, but the fact that we are still in a position where we are able to, maintain that kind of growth that we had hoped for?
Yes, economic survey has justified our thoughts actually, because now 5 major things have happened in the economic survey. Firstly, our economy is resilient, that we recovered significantly, we recovered quickly from the lows of the 2021, right. And we recovered in the second quarter of 2021. And the growth was 8.7% in the 21-22. And thereafter, on that high growth, we are growing at the rate of 7% for the current year. And next year, again, we will grow at around 6.5% if we average the trajectory of 6 to 6.8%. So our growth will be at around 6.5%. So that is a great thing, that we are growing in a sustainable manner, and the growth is consistent, and that is supported by the sound demand. That is number 2, and that resilience, then the sound demand, and third is the government capital expenditure, which has revived significantly at the rate of 60% during the first 9 months of the current financial year. That is a great thing, that government expenditure, that is a great pathway for the private investments. Private investments are happening, and private investments are picking up, and going forward there will be a great private investment in the economy, considering the sound demand and the capital investments by the government. Okay. And despite all the uncertainties, like you mentioned, that inflation, high inflation, then the geopolitical developments, Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the skyrocketing commodity prices, increased cost of raw materials, which has impacted the cost of doing business. Despite all these headwinds, we are growing at a faster rate. We are the leading economy. We are the fastest moving economy in the top 10 leading economies. And I was going by the number of IMF, the recent release by the IMF. Mm-hmm. Still, there are more than 40 economies which have not recovered from the pre-pandemic level. And we are growing consistently in every year. We are posting more than 6% growth rate. And next year, again, we will post the 6.5% growth rate. Now, the resilience, which is supported by the firstly agriculture sector, because agricultural sector is a major growth driver during the difficult years. We grew more than 3% for the consistent 4 years. Like sometimes the agriculture are majorly dependent on the monsoon scenario and so many factors, but fortunately we were able to grow at the rate of more than 3%, and that was supported by the ever increasing food grain production. Every year we are making a new highs in the food grain production. And third thing is the resilience of the agriculture exports. Now we are exporting more than $50 billion every year, which has increased from 30 to 40, then again next year 40 to 50. And current year, I believe, our expectation that we will post at around $60 billion in the agriculture exports. So these are the resiliences of the economy, are the fundamentals of the economy, which have created a great support to the economy to move forward with a sustainable manner and and at the high level, like IMF always says that we are a bright spot in the global ecosystem.
Right.
That has proved by the numbers, by the economic survey, by the thoughts of the economists. So going forward, I think there is a need for the great hand holding to the consumption level. Because consumption is now a major growth driver. If the consumption happens, then the factories also expand their production possibilities.
Right.
They expand their capacities. Then they deploy more and more workforce in their factories. So consumption is a major driver that will give a big push to the economy with the increased demand in the economy and the employment happening in the factories, enhanced production possibilities and enhanced capacity expansion by the private sector.
Right.
So I think the driver of consumption is majorly the disposable income. That will come from the rationalization of taxes for the middle income groups, which is very high. We are rating peak rates at the middle income of 15 lakhs, which is not happening, I think, in many of the economies. And our threshold level is 2.5 lakh. And at the 6 multiple, at 15 lakh, we are rating at highest peak rate, which is the 30%. So in many, like US, their peak rate is 37-fold from the threshold level. Our is 6th. 2.5 lakh and 15 lakhs. So I think there is a need for the rationalization of the middle incomes so that the personal disposable income increases and they are able to spend more in the market. Okay. And the consumption level is increased and factories are able to expand their production possibilities and the capacity expansion is happening and more employment is created by the factories and deployment of the workforce is happening in their respective premises.
Sure. So, Mr. Bal, several aspects that Dr. Sharma has spoken about what the future roadmap should be like. Let me begin by focusing first on the agriculture sector. Agriculture has been a bedrock for the Indian economy. In fact, it was the, it helped us recover quite well as well. The contribution of the sector has been immense during the pandemic as well. What the economic survey says about the Indian agricultural sector is that although this sector has performed well, it needs some kind of reorientation because of the kind of challenges that it faces. And some of the challenges that it speaks about, one of them happens to be climate change, of course, and rising input cost. Now, in the wake of these challenges, what are the kind of reorientation efforts that will have to be undertaken in order to boost the agriculture sector? What does the economic survey say?
See, there's no denying the fact that agriculture has to perform well for the Indian economy to go on its growth trajectory. We are more than 65% of the people, households are dependent on agriculture, and about 49 to 50% people are dependent on agriculture for employment. So there's no denying its importance. And luckily for us, it's been growing at around 3%, and the government has done its bit by bringing in measures and trying to promote innovation and providing insurance to this sector. But on first principles, to improve agriculture, as we say, we have to sort of, that lots of people sort of having disguised unemployment in agriculture. So we have to increase the productivity further and get people out of agriculture, from agriculture to low-grade manufacturing and then on to higher manufacturing. That would be the path which the economy will normally take. I remember one of the chief economic advisors earlier used to say, the best way to help agriculture at the moment is to get people out of agriculture. You can't keep breaking the landholds into smaller and smaller pieces where productivity keeps going down. We have to go in for consolidation. We have to go in for productivity increases. We have to go in for technology and better and more green inputs into it so that the agriculture sector becomes sustainable. It should not be sort of seen just as a measure of livelihood. It should be seen as a farmers' children at the moment are not keen on joining agriculture as a profession. Most of them are trying to move out because there's not enough incomes in agriculture, although the government is trying to sort of double agricultural income and has done a lot on that field. but there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of consolidation, there's a lot of technology which has to be brought in, there are a lot of focus inputs which need to be there, and the terms of trade of agriculture vis-a-vis industry and services need to improve for agriculture to play a more robust role in the Indian economy.
That's right. Dr. Sharma, I'll come back to you on that point. The fact that the survey also highlights how there is need to increase investment, and it says it must be encouraged through an affordable, timely and inclusive approach. So that's the way to go forward. How do we do that? How do we plan our strategy, especially because agriculture sector is very, very critical, very, very significant for our economy?
Yes, agriculture sector is very, very critical and significant part of the drivers of economic growth. So, as mentioned by Chief Economic Advisor, former Chief Economic Advisor, that most of the population, many people are still dependent on the agriculture sector. So, means most of the demand is coming from the agriculture sector. If the agriculture sector is not growing, if the incomes are not growing, demand will not happen at that much level. So, like investments, firstly, we have to revive the investment trajectory in the agriculture, gross capital formation in the agriculture sector. Earlier, it was at around 18-19% of the total gross capital formation, but now it is 9 to 10% only. So we have to push the infrastructure, agriculture infrastructure, like the cold chains and the rural roads, rural enterprises.
Right.
So if the growth is happening in the rural enterprises and we are able to make it more and more resilient and more robust in the food processing sector, like we produce every year a new high in the food grain production. So that has to be converted in the food processing. Like there are more than $1,300 billion agri and food imports in the world ecosystem, but we are able to only export $50 billion, which has increased now in the recent years from 30 to 50 during the last 2-3 years. And now we are projecting that we will grow at the $60 billion. But the demand which is happening at the global level is more than $1,300 billion. We are only 0.5% of the total global agri and food imports. So there is a lot of scope. I think this is the next IT sector of the Indian economy. And we have scope to increase it to the level of $500 billion. Now we are only 50 and we are 0.5%. Despite an agrarian economy, we are 0.5% of the global agri and food imports.
So to grow, the question is, we need investment.
Yes, we need investments.
Where do we get the investment from?
Investments will come if the government provides the basic infrastructure like roads, rural roads, warehousing, cold storage, all these things must be focused during the budgets, and the gross capital formation in the agriculture sector must happen at around 20% of the total gross capital formation, which is now 10% of the total. So that has to be focused for the more and more robust infrastructure that will attract the private investments. If the government investment is not happening, if the public investment is not happening, then the private sector will not come that much in the investments in the agriculture sector. That will the government sector will be the major driver of the to attract the private investments, to provide the basic infrastructure. So I think there is a lot of scope, firstly, to produce more and to produce adequately and to produce efficiently. Then to export to the other markets. Like there is a lot of demand, and demand will happen, and we have to increase this trajectory from $50 billion to $100 billion and then $250 billion and $500 billion. So I think that is the vision and that will help us to become a 5 trillion, 10 trillion or even $20 trillion economy in the coming times if we are able to focus much on our great resilience of the agriculture sector, and that will also provide a great employment opportunity to the rural youth with the promotion of the rural enterprises.
Right. Professor, our resilience and the optimism stemming from the various positives that we've seen that has helped us recover faster than anticipated. But what about the challenges? How big a worry will inflation continue to be is the first question. Also, tightening monetary policy, will it continue to have an impact on the Indian rupee? What kind of pressure do you see in the times to come as well?
Okay, first of all, the monetary policy. You see, monetary policy these days are not entirely independent. Okay, so if USA is raising the rates, we have to, we cannot keep our rates low, because in that case there will be a lot of capital outflow and we are going to have problems. So, the government cannot do much about these kind of things. But coming back to inflation globally, actually the inflation, as the IMF report says, it has peaked. It is now coming down gradually. In India, we have seen the economic survey curves that wholesale price index is actually having it's coming down, but then this consumer price index is still very, very high. But since we have a massive food grain surplus, I think India will not be in serious trouble regarding managing the inflation, because food inflation is the most important thing, because it hurts the poorest the most. But if you will allow me, I'd like to come back to add, because my field has been actually agriculture.
Sure.
So I have been itching to go for a few things. Actually, in the last 2 decades, in this particular century, after the agrarian crisis was more or less, overcome, Indian agriculture has actually become very dynamic. It has diversified into things like high value crops like horticulture, livestock, and so on and so forth. And that is why my predecessor who have said the need for this, what you call the value chain, post-harvest value chain is extremely important. So that investment has to come in. How it comes, of course, is different. We can get corporate investment and government investment also. I mean, government, particularly roads, PMG roads, GSY roads are greatly, instrumental in actually bringing in this change. And so, I mean, their maintenance and all that, or maybe their further expansion could be necessary. Just 2 more things I'd like to add. One is that, see, land reforms have become necessary because many people have left agriculture. So now some people have land which they cannot cultivate, and others don't have land. So if we make tenancy very easy, so that leasing out of land become easy, then there can be a revival of agriculture. I mean, farm size and actually there can be revival.
Okay.
Second thing is that agriculture, we want to be our backbone, we want to grow, but whenever there is internationally the price is very high, our farmers are normally deprived of reaping the benefit of that harvest, because then we start in whenever international price will be high when there is a production shortage in some crop. Okay. But then in that case, domestically we want to restrict the price, so that farmers are not able to benefit. So I think we should start refraining from doing that actually. So that will benefit the farmers greatly. So these 2 reforms I would like to put forward. In fact, my first
Professor, since you spoke about reforms, my next question to Mr. Bal is also about reforms. Mr. Bal, the fact that the economic survey clearly states that the journey that we've traversed, the resilience that we have shown, and what has placed us in this better position today, that we shine as a bright spot despite the global uncertainty, is the series of efforts and initiatives and reforms that we have undertaken over the last 8 years or so. Now, laying out the future roadmap, the economic survey talks about how there is need to dismantle LIC, licensing, inspection, compliance regime. Now, how difficult and a vision is that in a country like ours, where we've been talking about this for several years, but perhaps we've not been able to do so, and which also has become a major hurdle when we talk about our sustained growth?
True. See, the government has been focusing on ease of doing business for the last 7-8 years. And dismantling your license and controls is a very important, and compliances is a very important part of it. And only yesterday I was reading 3,500 compliances have been reduced and 400 sort of controls have been reduced. So it is very much been on the radar of the government. And I remember interministerial committees would look at it and try and improve and soften the edge of these license control raj. The ease of doing business, in which we jumped very high. In 2014, India was ranking about 142nd. And about 3-4 years back, our rank was about 60, till it was, unfortunately, the ease of doing business ranking was stopped by the World Bank. So India did very well on that front. And one of the main frontiers was through easing compliances and all.
Right.
And if you ask me, what is the binding constraint on India's growth story at the moment? It is trying to get this regulatory architecture right. Without this regulatory architecture, be it in the telecom sector, be it in the capital markets, be it in banking, should not be too intrusive, should not be too harsh, and it should be rule-based and transparent. That is what the mark of a good regulator in an advanced economy is.
Absolutely. From the industry's perspective, Dr. Sharma, that's going to be a huge relief and a welcome move. But how positive, how optimistic are you about this actually happening? Because we've been hearing a lot of previous economic advisors also, and I'm sure Mr. Bal would have heard it over the years, how this has become a major stumbling block when we talk about growth levels and accelerating India's economic growth.
Yes, that is true that we improved from 142 to 63.
But there's a long way
that
to go.
has to be percolated at the ground level.
Right.
Ease of doing business must happen for the small businesses, for the MSMEs, because the majorly corporates are globally integrated. They have good resilience. They are connected very much with the global markets. They are connected with the global value chains. But the ease of doing business is required particularly for the MSME sector. And the government has started. They have now introduced the single window system. Now the single window system is available in more than 16 states. And many reforms are taking place, and the government is consulting industry-wise and segment-wise reforms needed for the ease of doing business to
one
move
of those,
forward.
sorry to cut you short, but one of those is very important and which I would like you to
Firstly, I
talk
would
about
mention the
is
decriminalization of the minor offences that is needed at this juncture, which creates a lot of hurdles and roadblocks for the businesses to move forward. That has to be focused, that must be at the radar of the government. So that will provide a great room for the small businesses to move forward, because they are facing so much compliance cost, and they don't have the much resources to go to the courts and all these to fulfill all the compliances.
In fact, the economic survey does talk about a lot of other reforms, a host of other reforms that may be required in the times to come. But one very quick question, time is running out, and on which the industry can actually play a very significant role is including women in India's growth story. We've done remarkably well, but the fact that we still have to go a long way ahead, the economic survey clearly talks about how in the next decade we should include more and more women, particularly in leadership roles. So how can the industry actually transform the role of women?
Yes, we are very positive that this Amrit Kal, next 25 years will be the women-led growth. I think the women participation in the GDP will increase, and now they are taking the lead, and going forward, more and more participation by the women at the leadership roles, at the significant roles, will provide a great trajectory to the Indian economy to move forward and to become more and more sustainable in the next 25 years, to become a developed economy and to become a economy of US dollar 30 trillion or 40 trillion. That will be the vision of the Indian economy, led by the women and women enterprises.
Okay, so with that hope, I'll have to wind up the program. Yes. Time allows me to take up only that much on the program today. Thank you, Professor, Mr. Bal and Dr. Sharma, for joining me on the program today, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time. I'll see you same time tomorrow now. In fact, tomorrow through the day, we will cover the presentation of the budget and analyze every detail of the union budget through the day tomorrow, the 1st of February on Sansad TV. So do tune into Sansad TV tomorrow starting 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. We will decode the union budget for you the entire day on the channel. Thank you very much for your time.